My husband's double life and a mistress's scheme to bring 3 secret children to kick me out of my house, but they couldn't break me. My mistress is attempting to evict me, 42F, from my home, and my husband, 45M, has been leading a double life. I never imagined posting something like this on Reddit, but I'm in dire need of guidance. For the past 20 years, I have worked as a professional photographer with a focus on family portraits and weddings. I recognize the irony of documenting other people's joys while my own family is in disarray. I spent years concentrating on developing my career. Although I had always desired children, the time never seemed to be right. Something connected when I met Robert 5 years ago at the opening of a friend's gallery. He was quiet, considerate, and seemed committed to creating a secure future for us, which set him apart from other people I had dated. After a year of courtship, we were married, and the home we currently reside in was a wedding present from my parents that was only registered in my name. Our marriage was lovely for the first few years. We would spend weekends planning our future family while I edited pictures in my home studio and Robert would bring me coffee. We were ecstatic when, at 41, I became pregnant. Robert decorated the nursery himself, went to all of my prenatal appointments, and even learned how to prepare healthy meals for me. After the birth of our son, everything changed. The signals were there, looking back, but I was too happy about being a mother at last and too tired from late-night feedings to notice them clearly. The once caring and attentive Robert grew more and more aloof. Unless I specifically requested, the man who had painted clouds on our son's nursery ceiling wouldn't even hold him. I initially thought his actions were the result of the transition period that new fathers frequently go through. One afternoon, Robert arrived home early from work, and I was sitting in my studio trying to edit a wedding picture shoot while our son was napping. He organized his desk for an hour, something he had never done before, rather than spending this infrequent leisure time with our infant. Gradually, the late evenings at work began. First, he would explain, it was once a week, end-of-month reports. Training new employees comes next, twice a week. Before long, he was returning home late nearly every night, saying he had to cover extra shifts because the bank was understaffed. The more I attempted to engage him in our son's life, the more he distanced himself, and I realized something was amiss when he missed our son's first grin and dismissed it with a flippant, "There will be other smiles." He adopted the mantras, "I'm not good with babies," and "he won't even remember this stage." Each excuse was like a tiny cut, scarcely perceptible at first, but more agonizing as they mounted. I also began to notice other changes. He became extremely careful of his laptop, changed the password on his phone, and always took calls in a different room. I trusted him even though I now recognized the classic indicators. After all, we had planned every aspect of our family life together and tried for this child jointly. I've always found that looking through my camera lens helps me see things clearly, but for some reason, I failed to notice the biggest scam that was taking place in front of me. That is, until I received a message yesterday that absolutely upended my world. The message included multiple photographs and was sent from an unidentified phone. The pictures of Robert grinning and lounging with a younger woman and 3 kids who resembled him were like a kick to the belly. One picture showed them at a beach. Last summer, Robert had claimed to be on a business vacation at the same beach, which I knew. In another, the timestamp indicates that image was taken during the weekend when Robert claimed to be working overtime, and they were decorating a Christmas tree together. You deserve to know the truth. Your husband has been living 2 lives, and I'm the mother of his other children. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, read the succinct but heartbreaking letter that went with it. I nearly dropped my phone due to my trembling hands. I'm trained as a photographer to identify photos that have been altered, to look for irregularities and manipulations. These images were recent, authentic, and unprocessed. This had been going on since before our marriage, since the children seemed to be between the ages of 3 and 7. As I waited for Robert to return home that evening, my thoughts were racing with all of the late nights, business trips, and justifications he had offered me over the years. When he eventually entered, I silently showed him the pictures. His expression, which was one of resignation rather than alarm or denial, told me all I needed to know. I inquired in a fairly steady voice, "How long?" With my least favorite moniker, Nick, he began. Every word felt like glass in my throat as I said, "How long?" He appeared smaller than I had ever seen him when he sank into the chair. "About 8 years. Victoria and I, it started before I met you. I never meant for it to become this complicated." 8 years. He had been living a different life the whole time I had known him. He had another family, a younger lady and 3 healthy kids, while I was undergoing fertility treatments and navigating the difficulties of a high-risk pregnancy at 41. Even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer, I questioned, "Why did you marry me?" He continued, "I loved you. I still love you. as though that were any consolation. Victoria was my past, but you represented something different. A chance at a more stable, respectable life. Then I laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to reverberate throughout our now overly spacious home. Respectable? You built our entire marriage on lies. You watched me struggle to have a baby, knowing you had 3 children across town. However, it wasn't until this morning that the entire tragedy of my circumstances struck. The doorbell rang as I was in the nursery, attempting to soothe my son following a restless night. Victoria, 34F, was standing there with 3 children that were definitely Robert's. She just pushed past me into my house without waiting for an invitation. So this is the fancy house he bought you, she continued, tracing the wall of my dining room, where I had hung my most treasured family photographs. Nice upgrade from the apartment he keeps us in. As her kids strolled into my living room and touched everything they could find, I hugged my son closer. It broke my heart to see how much they resembled Robert. His eyes were exactly the same as the oldest, a youngster of about 7. He smiled at the middle child, a girl who was maybe 5 years old. And his curly hair belonged to the youngest boy, who was also around 3 years old. I managed to ask, "What do you want?" Even though her calculating stare told me the answer. Victoria's smile fell short of her eyes. "What's rightfully ours? Robert promised us this house. He said once everything was settled, we'd all live here together. A proper family needs space, after all." After pointing to her kids, she gave my son a stern look. More space than a middle-aged mom and her surprise baby need. Her statement struck me like a physical blow for their audacity. Robert had no right to promise anyone that this house was mine, a gift from my parents. Her attitude immediately shifted after I informed her of this. She snarled, "Listen," and moved in closer. "I've been in Robert's life longer than you have. These children need their father. They need a stable home. You're just the midlife crisis he'll get over soon enough." I discovered a strength I was unaware I possessed. I firmly said, "Get out of my house," even though my hands were shaking. "This is my property, legally mine. Robert has no claim to it, and neither do you." Anger twisted Victoria's face. "You think you've won something here? You're nothing but a temporary distraction. Robert always comes back to us. Always." She raised her voice, purposefully loud enough to be heard by the neighbors. "You're trying to tear apart a family. Think about these innocent children." Despite my internal disintegration, I maintained my position. The only one tearing apart families here is Robert, and you, by trying to claim what isn't yours. My neighbor Mar, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, came over right away after they departed. She offered to testify if necessary because she had seen the entire incident. She squeezed my hand and added, "I've already written down everything I saw and heard. That woman's behavior was completely unacceptable." I contacted my buddy Jane, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and she came over immediately. She has assisted me in beginning to record everything, including the messages, the altercation, and Victoria's threats. She also reminded me that I am financially secure because I am a successful photographer. "The house is yours. Your business is yours. You don't need Robert's support to raise your son," she stated. Sitting in my home studio right now, surrounded by dozens of pictures of contented families, I'm wondering how I failed to recognize the warning flags in my own life. Robert keeps phoning and leaving messages about finding a solution that makes everyone happy, and "we can work this out." As if there could be a happy ending to this degree of treachery. The other family and the falsehoods aren't even the worst part. It's coming to terms with the fact that Robert was merely going through the motions, whereas I was cherishing every second of my late-life pregnancy, carefully recording every scan, every kick, and every preparation for our child. All these firsts had previously happened to him with Victoria. And I was simply a side endeavor? A dignified front? I need guidance. Do I need to get a divorce right away? Get Victoria subject to a restraining order? How can I keep my son safe in this mess? Although I've already gotten in touch with a lawyer, I would still like to hear from anyone who has had a similar situation. Right now, my son and my job are my top priorities. Next weekend is my wedding photo shoot, and I find it kind of funny that I'll be documenting someone else's happily ever after, when mine is in ruins. Perhaps, though, I need to remind myself that trust and love endure, even if they didn't in my own marriage. Has anyone already handled a scenario like this? What should I do initially? Right now, I feel like I'm drowning in a sea of confusion and betrayal, so any advice would be invaluable. I convince myself over and over again that I'm capable of handling this. I overcame a dangerous pregnancy, I developed a profitable company, and I can get through this too. However, I'm afraid of what tomorrow may bring as I watch my kid sleep soundly in his cot, oblivious to how his world has altered. First update. We appreciate all of your encouraging messages and remarks. I have to discuss what has transpired over the past 12 hours because the issue has taken unexpected turns. Victoria has started using social media for her campaign. She has been posting in our neighborhood Facebook groups, portraying me as a homewrecker who took another woman's spouse and herself as a victim. If the irony weren't so devastating, it would be absurd. She is showing her kids pics of Robert's pictures, saying they are the original family, and I am the intruder. Even more disturbing, though, was what transpired this afternoon. Victoria arrived at my photography studio posing as a prospective customer who wanted to schedule a family portrait session. She used a false name on the booking and had a different style, so at first I didn't recognize her. She was grinning and looking through my wedding portfolio when I entered the consultation room. "Such beautiful moments," she remarked without raising her gaze. "You're good at capturing other people's happiness while destroying it in real life." She went on to inform me that until I changed my mind about the house, she would post unfavorable evaluations of my company on all platforms. I remained calm and turned on the audio recording feature of the studio's security system. "You're trespassing," I said forcefully. "Leave now, or I'll call the police." She carefully got to her feet, moved over to my wall of highlighted wedding pictures, and purposefully knocked one down, breaking the frame. "Oops," she murmured, seeming to be worried. "Looks like things break easily around here." Victoria departed before the police arrived, even though my assistant had already contacted them. "I've recorded everything, including the shattered frame, surveillance footage, and social media posts. In addition to defending me, my attorney is requesting an emergency restraining order to safeguard my company. She has also told me that Victoria may have engaged in harassment and attempted extortion with her acts." The most unexpected development was when Rachel, 47F, Robert's sister, contacted me in private. She claims that 6 months prior, Robert attempted to obtain a second mortgage on my home by falsifying my signature. Instead of filing charges, the bank, which is also where he works, discovered the counterfeit and discreetly allowed him to leave. This explains why he had been so evasive about his recent promotion to a separate branch. Victoria's fans are always posting critical remarks on my studio's social media pages, so I've had to temporarily close them down. Concerned about the situation, a few of my scheduled clients have contacted me. Fortunately, most of them have been understanding when I've been honest with them. Some have even told their personal tales of surviving betrayal in their families. Victoria had already done this, according to the findings of my lawyer's private investigator. She harassed another woman in a similar circumstance in a different state 3 years ago. Her tendency to approach successful people and use her kids as emotional leverage to obtain financial benefits appears to be consistent. I've joined a support group for parents going through family crisis circumstances and begun individual therapy. The therapist assisted me in seeing that, despite my concerns about becoming a mother at a later age of 42, I am actually ahead in terms of both financial and emotional stability. She is assisting me in creating plans to shield my son from the psychological effects of this circumstance. Telling my wedding customers why I had to reschedule several of our photo shoots has been the hardest part. It feels like a terrible joke to me as a photographer who focuses on capturing love and devotion to have my own life turned into a warning. But my work is becoming stronger. Even when my own life is in disarray, there's something therapeutic about concentrating on sincere moments of happiness. More security cameras have been placed around my home and studio. Mary, my neighbor, has been amazing. She has been watching and recording anytime Victoria or Robert show up in the area. The local police have stepped up their patrols in our area and now have a dossier on the problem. A few of you inquired about Robert's response to everything. He has been messaging me to say that if I simply quit being tough and agree to sell the house, he can cure everything. He doesn't seem to see that this is about years of deceit and manipulation finally coming to light, not about the house anymore. A particular thank you to everyone who offered materials concerning safeguarding small businesses from defamation campaigns, and once again, thank you for your support. I'm concentrating on my son, my business, and creating a new life free from deceit and manipulation by taking things one day at a time. According to my attorney, we have a solid case for the restraining order as well as possible civil lawsuits for slander and harassment. When there are noteworthy developments, I'll provide another update. Second update. First of all, I want to thank everyone for their ongoing guidance and support. Over the past 12 hours, the situation has taken a number of unforeseen turns. This morning, Robert arrived at my door, unkempt and holding a manila package. He said in a raspy voice, "I've signed papers relinquishing any potential claim to the house. I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I want to do the right thing now." The truth came out when I questioned what caused this abrupt transformation. He had tried to use my property as collateral for loans on several occasions, according to the results of an internal investigation conducted by his bank. He was compelled to leave in order to avoid facing criminal charges, therefore his departure was not voluntary. All of his transactions are currently being thoroughly audited by the bank. However, this is where things become much more intricate. My lawyer's private investigator discovered Victoria's unsettling behavior pattern in 3 states. It appears that she has previously targeted men in solid jobs, established parallel families, and then used the children as leverage to obtain assets and property. Once she got what she wanted, she moved on in each instance. The network of professional photographers has been tremendously helpful. Several well-known photographers in our community launched a counter-campaign after learning of Victoria's attempts to damage my company's reputation. They denounced the harassment and shared their positive experiences working with me. One even volunteered to let me use her studio when I needed it. I have a newfound sense of hope because this support has been a lifeline during such a turbulent period. Even though I have a long way to go, I'm committed to protecting my baby, getting my life back on track, and holding Victoria and Robert responsible for their deeds. As additional information becomes available, I'll keep you updated. A fellow photographer generously offered me a location for shooting, and I accepted. The most startling revelation came from the previous instructor of Victoria's eldest child. After witnessing the social media uproar, she got in touch and shared alarming details about Victoria's previous conduct. Victoria would frequently boast about her method of achieving financial stability during parent-teacher conferences, even displaying records from prior property settlements. By establishing a pattern of what seems to be deliberate deceit and exploitation, my lawyer is assembling a compelling case. It is challenging to trace Victoria's past because we have found that she has adopted at least 3 different surnames in the last 10 years. Records of her involvement in 2 such cases in Colorado and Nevada that resulted in property settlements in her favor were discovered by the private investigator. Unexpectedly, some of Victoria's family members have been contacting her. Her cousin revealed unsettling information about Victoria's previous plots, such as how she picks her victims deliberately depending on their resources and susceptibility to manipulation. The relative claims that before Robert and I even met, Victoria had been keeping tabs on the performance of my photography company for months. My new support group has been a lifesaver. One participant, a family law lawyer, gave me insight into how Victoria's prior actions would impact any custody agreements in the future. She clarified that parents who use their children as pawns in property disputes are seen negatively by the courts. The fact that one of Victoria's former victims got in touch with me this afternoon marked a turning point. Sandra, 45F, from Denver related a situation that was quite similar to hers, including the unexpected visit by kids and the demands for property rights. If necessary, she is willing to testify regarding Victoria's behavioral pattern. My business has had an unanticipated spike in support despite the chaos. Because of my excellent handling of this dilemma, local wedding planning organizations have begun suggesting clients to me specifically. Anyone who can maintain their professionalism under this kind of pressure is exactly who I want capturing my clients' special moments, a well-known wedding planner told me. Another alarming finding from the bank's inquiry has been made. Robert has been keeping up his double life by falsifying bank papers. He had been taking money out of his retirement account to help Victoria and her kids, which put our son's financial future in jeopardy. I'm getting advice from my financial advisor to document everything for the divorce process. Today, my therapist helped me come to a significant realization. My assets are no longer the only thing I need to defend. It's about confronting a pattern of systematic exploitation that has harmed several families. I may be able to stop Victoria from doing this to someone else in addition to protecting myself by retaliating legally and in public. I've begun a thorough documentation endeavor, documenting every encounter and occasion with my photographic abilities. Despite the pending restraining order, security cameras have repeatedly seen Victoria driving past my residence. We are adding each event to our legal file. Knowing how much this has affected my son is the most devastating aspect, but I'm determined to fight for his future and make sure he grows up in a secure atmosphere. Finding some of Victoria's social media posts in which she appeals to sympathy by mentioning her kids has been a noteworthy development. She asks them why someone would take their father away when they are holding signs. According to my attorney, this type of conduct frequently backfires in family court since judges highly disapprove of parents who openly use their kids as leverage. For the protection of my house and place of business, I have engaged a security consultant. They have assisted me in putting in place a thorough safety procedure that includes direct links to local law enforcement and panic buttons. My son's safety cannot be compromised, even though it feels strange to have to take these steps. I'm meeting with a forensic accountant tomorrow who focuses on exposing financial fraud in divorce proceedings. It appears that Robert's financial history demonstrates a pattern of questionable activities that may support the claim of intentional fraud. I appreciate all of your help and guidance. I would especially like to thank the Reddit legal community for assisting me in understanding my options and rights. When there are noteworthy developments, I'll provide another update. Third update, I would want to discuss what appears to be the last chapter of this tremendous circumstance. Significant changes have occurred during the past week, and there has now been some resolution. There have been some surprising developments since the divorce process formally started. In addition to using business cash and depleting his retirement accounts, the forensic accountant found that Robert had been doing so in order to assist Victoria's family and keep up connections with 2 other women in nearby states. The internal probe conducted by the bank has now evolved into a comprehensive criminal investigation. If Victoria's complex plan fell apart more quickly than everyone anticipated. 5 more ladies came forward with similar experiences after my last update. The pattern was the same in all of them. Victoria targeted wealthy men, formed parallel families, and then used the children to increase her wealth. Together with these women and their attorneys, we have put together a thorough case that is currently being examined by prosecutors across several states. The most important discovery was made by Victoria's former assistant, who supplied thorough documentation of her business plan. These records, which included in-depth notes about my photography company from before I met Robert, demonstrated how she investigated possible targets. To obtain property rights, she planned fortuitous encounters and deliberately exploited circumstances. During our meeting with my lawyer last Tuesday, we learned that Victoria had tried to perform the same ruse in Washington state while she was attempting to seize my residence. In that case, the detective introduced herself with yet another surname and shared surveillance footage of her exploring properties with another man. The direction of my photographic business has changed unexpectedly. I've been inundated with bookings since my story was featured, with my consent, in a bridal magazine piece about resiliency in the wedding industry. As one bride stated, "Someone who can maintain artistic integrity while handling life's biggest challenges is exactly who I want capturing my wedding. This is why couples intentionally invite me." I've established a support system for people who have encountered comparable difficulties. Despite the anguish, this phase of my life has shown me a strength I was unaware I possessed and that reconstruction is achievable with perseverance and the correct assistance. Knowing that I've learned lessons from this event that I will always apply, I will keep fighting for my son's safety and our future. We are developing tools to support professional women who are the targets of similar scams. We're working with financial advisors and family law lawyers to provide resources that will assist people in recognizing and safeguarding themselves against this kind of deception. Our advisory board now includes 3 of Victoria's former victims. Victoria is currently the subject of several fraud investigations, and the restraining order against her has been rendered permanent. When her own posts were used as proof of abuse and attempted extortion, her social media effort completely failed. Her tendency to use children as emotional leverage particularly worried the judge. Speaking of kids, the child advocate assigned by the court found that Victoria had been teaching her kids to seem distressed for pictures on social media. Child Protective Services is currently addressing a troubling pattern of emotional manipulation that was discovered during the investigation. The fact that these defenseless kids were used as pawns saddens me. The life Robert feigned to lead contrasts sharply with his current circumstances. Mutual friends claim that he and Victoria only ever fight about money while he rents a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. Since his financial wrongdoing lawsuit is still pending, his banking career is essentially over. Everything that previously made the man who said he needed a respectable life seem respectable is gone. I found a new schedule with my son. He may safely explore the comfortable play space I've created in a portion of my home studio while I edit pictures. I was given full custody by the judge, and Robert was only permitted supervised visits following his completion of parenting programs and counseling. The mansion, which has been the subject of so much drama, has come to represent tenacity. I've redecorated, wiping off the evidence of dishonesty and substituting real moments that I took pictures of. Photographs of my client's sincere happiness and love now adorn the walls Victoria once desired, serving as a daily reminder that reality wins out over deceit. According to my therapist, I'm processing this trauma with amazing ease. Even while it still hurts, the betrayal no longer defines who I am. I've discovered that being a 42-year-old late mother wasn't a drawback. I had the tools and strength to shield my son from this upheaval because of my well-established work and life experience. For those who are curious about Victoria's most recent attempts, she and Robert have been mandated to reimburse her former victims. After learning that Victoria had been using child support payments to finance her real estate ventures, their maternal grandmother took custody of Victoria's children. At last, the kids are getting the treatment and security they are due. I took pictures at my first wedding since this whole thing started last Saturday. I had no resentment as I watched the couple exchange sincere vows of love and dedication. Rather, I discovered that I was even more grateful for the genuine moments. Being deceived hasn't harmed my capacity to portray genuine feelings. If anything, realizing the importance of authentic connection has improved it. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. When Victoria tried to threaten me, when Robert tried to control me, and when I doubted my own strength, your counsel and support enabled me to remain strong. This group of people were my lifeline when I was at my lowest. I'm rebuilding something better, not just getting by. My business is expanding, my son is doing well, and our future appears to be more promising than ever. The darkest negatives can occasionally yield the best images. Yes, this photographer did. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.